How's everyone doing today? It's your boy JG Domination, and today we're here with the notable Day 2 and Day 3 picks in the 2020 NFL Draft, talking about the NFC North. So you already know we got to start off with the Chicago Bears, work our way over here to the Detroit Lions, then talk about my Green Bay Packers, and then of course we're going to wrap this thing up with the Minnesota Vikings. So let's go ahead and get started with the Chicago Bears. Their notable Day 2 and Day 3 picks goes as followed, and that is tight end Cole Kmet, second round out of Notre Dame, cornerback Jalen Johnson, second rounder out of Utah, and wide receiver Darnell Mooney, fifth rounder out of Tulane. Now, this video says notable Day 2 and Day 3 picks, so if I didn't know much about the player, I did not write them down. It's that simple, guys. So, with Cole Kmet, what makes the pick interesting, it's not that he's a bad tight end prospect, right? It's the fact that the Bears have like 10 tight ends on their roster, including Cole Kmet, and then they just paid Jimmy Graham 2 years, $16 million. So their tight end room is just very interesting. If the Bears are going towards running more tight end sets on offense for Nick Foles or Mitchell Trubisky, my guess is Nick Foles, then I guess the pick makes more sense. But in the grand scheme of things, like, you already have so many tight ends on the roster, and now you're bringing in Cole Kmet. For Jalen Johnson, you know, you do need another corner on the outside, or at least a guy that can compete for that spot. And Jalen Johnson out of Utah, you know, it's going to be an easier transition because the Bears do run a lot of zone coverage, and you know, Jalen Johnson coming from Utah, a school that runs a lot of zone coverage, so maybe he can be the future replacement for Prince Amukamara. Maybe he competes for the starting job and gets it this year. And then for wide receiver Darnell Mooney, this is interesting because the Bears actually traded up for this pick and got Darnell Mooney. I think Allen Robinson is in the final year of his contract, and with Anthony Miller, I think next offseason they'll decide whether or not his fifth-year option will be picked up. Or no. He wasn't a first-round pick. I'm tripping. The year after, I think, is Anthony Miller's last year. So this wide receiving core could look a lot different. And let's see. They have Riley Ridley on the roster and Javon Wims on the roster, two Georgia boys from UGA. And now they have Darnell Mooney. Might be a special teams guy early on, but could see some snaps and could see some targets during the year. So not a bad little draft for the Bears in terms of a decent haul, considering they don't have a first-round pick. Now we go to the Detroit Lions, and they have 4 notable picks for me. Running back DeAndre Swift, second rounder out of Georgia. Edge rusher Julian Okwara, a third rounder out of Notre Dame. Offensive guard Jonah Jackson, a third rounder out of Ohio State. And wide receiver Quintez Cephas, a fifth rounder out of Wisconsin. So looking at DeAndre Swift, some fans a little confused as to why the Lions took a running back in the early second round. Some fans, you know, it kind of makes sense to them. To me, it makes sense. I really like Kerryon Johnson. I do think he's a good running back, but he's always hurt. And the best ability is availability. And when it comes to Kerryon Johnson, you know, he's missed, I think, like half the games in his career. You know, he just has an injury issue. And bringing in DeAndre Swift, who is as balanced as any other running back prospect in the class. He's very balanced. He can catch the ball smooth out of the backfield. He can run between the tackles. He can pass protect. I mean, he's a very smooth running back prospect. Now, he's not a freak talent or a generational guy like Saquon or Zeke. He's not on that playing field. But think of like a poor man's Le'Veon. Like, he kind of has a little Le'Veon Bell in his game, but he's not Le'Veon Bell, if that makes sense. And now you look at edge rusher Julian Okwara. I like this pick for Detroit. Number one, it's a scheme fit. Number two, I think his brother Romeo Okwara plays on this team. So you got Romeo and Juliet, or Julian, I should say. So yeah, the Okwaras are reunited, and they're both scheme fits, which is ironic. Jonah Jackson, this is a good pick. You know, a guard out of a guard out of Ohio State. They lost Graham Glasgow to the Denver Broncos, and Rick Wagner, of course, they cut. and he ended up going to the Green Bay Packers. This team did sign Big V to a massive contract, which is a little head-scratching still, but, I mean, if he plays up to it, then it's worth it, you know? But Jonah Jackson could come in, compete day one for the right guard spot. He can probably win that right guard job, and all of a sudden, you figured out your offensive line in terms of starters for next season. And then Quintus Cephas, you know, a fifth round out of Wisconsin, just a good college football receiver. But he could be fine in the NFL. I mean, Danny Amendola is not going to play forever. He might retire at the end of this season. Who knows? Marvin Jones isn't going to be able to play at a high level forever. And, you know, you got something going here with Kenny Golladay. He's a really good wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. He's a little under the radar, but I think people are starting to catch on to how good he is. So, if anything, you add wide receiver depth here with Quintus Cephas from Wisconsin. Now we go to the Green Bay Packers. I have 3 notable picks that I have written down. And we're going to start off with running back A.J. Dillon, a second rounder out of Boston College. Tight end / fullback, yeah, you heard that correctly, Josiah DeGuara, a third rounder out of Cincinnati. And then offensive tackle / offensive guard John Runyon Jr., a sixth rounder out of Michigan. So, Green Bay has been getting clowned for, at least in a lot of people's eyes, having the worst draft this year. I'm not 100% certain about that. I don't think Green Bay had the worst draft. I think people are ticked off that, you know, the 2 things that they needed the most, they didn't address early on, and they went quarterback, running back, and then tight end / you know, fullback with their first 3 picks. You know, I get that. I get the frustration, but with running back A.J. Dillon, this gives them a power back who is a very good athlete as well. I think he ran like a 4.5 for a guy that's like 6'2", 240 pounds. He's basically, a lot of people are throwing the Derrick Henry comparison. To me, he's a more explosive Eddie Lacy who can actually maintain his weight, which is a really good thing because Eddie Lacy was pretty good for the Packers for about 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. So, I do like A.J. Dillon, the player. I just thought the value was a little too early for me. But, you know, Green Bay, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, they're both free agents this year. And if they do pay Aaron Jones, they're going to have to be smart about it. He's going to probably demand more than Austin Eckler, who's on a bargain of a deal. But I don't think he's going to get Zeke money or Christian McCaffrey money either. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Packers do pay him, how much are they going to give him. And A.J. Dillon, just a nice compliment to what the system is asking for, which is a downhill running attack with play action. It should be interesting to see A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones get some work together. And then tight end Josiah DeGuara, a third round out of Cincinnati. He's a tight end / fullback / slot receiver. He did a lot of different things at Cincinnati. He's kind of a utility player, but he was very productive at Cincinnati as well. I do like the player. Don't get me wrong. I do like the player. Again, a little too early for me. Personally, if I were drafting, I would have banked on him being there in the 5th round. But I like the player. Just thought it was a little too early. But he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything. A good blocker, a good catch, receiver out of the backfield, and as a straight line tight end. So should be interesting to see how he's utilized in this offense. And then finally, offensive tackle / offensive guard John Runyon Jr. from Michigan, a 6th rounder. Out of all the offensive linemen we drafted in the 6th round, we took 3 offensive linemen, by the way. No receiver, which is kind of funny, but we took 3 offensive linemen. If I had to bank on any of these guys being good or being a starter, it's John Runyon from Michigan. It's John Runyon. He played left tackle at Michigan, but when I watch him on tape, he just looks more like a guard. He just looks like he would be a natural fit at guard. His footwork, to me, it doesn't scream franchise left tackle. It screams kick him inside the guard and let him maul people in the run game. And that's what I think he can be, you know. And listen, did we have other decent picks? I guess, kind of, but I mean, I don't really care to talk about them, to be honest. Let's just go ahead and wrap them up with the Vikings. wrap it up with the Vikings. We got 5 picks to talk about. Minnesota, really good draft, by the way. Everyone's saying, oh, Dallas had the best draft. I can argue Minnesota did. But Minnesota also made like a million picks, so I would hope they had the best draft. But we start off with offensive tackle Ezra Cleveland, a second rounder out of Boise State. Cornerback Cameron Dantzler, a third rounder out of Mississippi State. Defensive end / defensive tackle James Lynch, a fourth rounder out of Baylor. Linebacker Troy Dye, a fourth rounder out of Oregon. And then safety Brian Cole II, a seventh rounder out of Mississippi State. I really like the Ezra Cleveland pick. It kind of reminds me of when this team took Brian O'Neill. And he's been a pretty damn good athlete at the right tackle position. Now you get a shoe-in, perfect scheme fit, great athlete in Ezra Cleveland to be your future franchise left tackle. If he can just, play better with his strength, if he can just, develop some natural NFL strength, he's going to be pretty solid. He has the footwork. He has the athleticism. He's just got to play stronger. And I think if he does that, then you got yourself a rocket left tackle. In the second round even. And then cornerback Cameron Dantzler of Mississippi State. A good prospect, not the greatest athlete, but I don't think Zimmer cares as long as you get the job done. So, and you look at his tape, he did that a lot. He did go up against a lot of the better SEC wide receivers, and he held his own in basically all the matchups. So Mike Zimmer is just saying, hey, we don't care that you're not the greatest athlete. We don't care if you ran track or not. We just want you to come in here, do the job, and just be good at what you do, Cameron Dantzler. And I think Zimmer could potentially groom this guy to be a future starter in this scheme, which will be interesting to see. And then we got defensive lineman James Lynch. I listed him as a defensive end / defensive tackle because that's what he did a lot at Baylor. And it wouldn't surprise me if he did the same thing with Minnesota. I think he'll be better served as a defensive tackle next to Michael Pierce and be like more of an interior rusher to offset Michael Pierce as a great run stopper. But I can see Minnesota getting creative and doing a lot of different things. Plus, I think that pick offers versatility to move to a 3-4 defense if they ever want it to. And that's kind of the same thing here with Troy Dye, fourth round out of Oregon. But I think what makes this pick even more interesting is now the Vikings, if this guy can develop and get fast-tracked to being a starter, you can potentially use Anthony Barr more as a pass rusher, which is what he did at UCLA. He was an off-ball linebacker that rushed the passer a lot. And we saw towards the second half of the year, Anthony Barr was rushing the passer more, kind of off-ball or even in a stand-up defensive end position with his hand in the dirt. So if they want to do that more with Anthony Barr and Troy Dye can come in and play right away, then that's going to offer some serious versatility. So that's why I like the pick. And then safety Brian Cole, a seventh rounder out of Mississippi State. Brian Cole II, that being just a good swing at a potential safety prospect in the seventh round. Probably could have went a little earlier in the draft, but just a nice little swing. It kind of reminds me of when this team took Holton Hill, I think last year, the year before. He was like a seventh rounder, and they're looking to fast track him to be a starter potentially, or at least get more playing time. So if they can develop this guy to potentially have a role in this defense, maybe be the Jaron Curse replacement where he's like a bigger nickel corner, that could be something. So for Minnesota, I thought they had a really good draft. The Packers, I don't think they had the worst draft, I think that's a little harsh. You really can't assess a draft, that quickly. You have to see the guys play. And over time, you have to see how it ages. Because, the 2017 draft, we just saw a lot of guys... we just had the deadline for fifth-year options being picked up or declined. And out of 30 options, 13 of them were declined. So is that 13 teams saying that we missed on our first-round pick? Because at the time, we thought they were great picks. But now look, those guys won't be on the team next year, potentially. So You know, don't be so quick to judge. I thought Detroit had a pretty solid draft, and for the Bears, not the best draft, but hey, if they just found 2 potential starters in Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson, then it's a hit. Because if they can just come in and play and be good players, that's all that really matters. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and the next one will be the NFC South. Peace out.